Welcome back to our sessions exploring Pada 1 of the Yoga Sutras. This is our 9th and final session, and today we're going to begin with Sutra 46, and we're going to go to the end. As always, we have Danelle Mason here leading us in the chants. Welcome, Danelle. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thanks. Good morning from New Zealand.
Yes, and good afternoon from the United States. This is the final practice that we're going to be going through. And what I'd recommend doing is once we get through this lesson, please go back to the playlist again at youtube.com/kriyā-yoga online and start at the beginning and go through these courses multiple times and repeat the mantras, repeat the sutras multiple times so that they become more resonant within you. It'll help you learn the Yoga Sutras. But before we begin, let's take a moment for a centering meditation. So closing your eyes, feeling the body. Give your awareness to the breath. And imagine the breath is like a wave of prana, a wave of life force. And as you inhale, the body is full, strong and clear. And on the exhale, there is a softening, a flowing, a merging with the space all around you. And as you feel the breath move in and through the body, notice how the body moves, extends, expands on the inhale. And notice how the body becomes soft and still and light on the exhale. And as you breathe, listen to the space around you. You can hear my voice. You can hear the sound of the environment, the room in which you're sitting. And feel as though you are free in space, that you are aware of citta as ether, as space, that your body exists in that space, that your breath flows through that space. And the silence or the sounds that you hear are just an expression of Om rising and falling from moment to moment. And then feeling deeply into the body, feeling the flow of the breath. As we review these final sutras in chapter 1, listen with your whole being, staying centered in your body and your breath. And we'll honor the Kriya-yoga teachers of this tradition, Mahavatar Babaji, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shrikteshwar, Paramahansa Yogananda, Roy Eugene Davis, and their successors for making it possible for us to be here today to participate with you in this living tradition. We'll honor the inspiration to explore the sutras through the works of Roy Eugene Davis, Vyāsa Houston of the American Sanskrit Institute, and Swami Veda Bharati. Om, peace. Okay, so we'll begin with Sutra 146, and Danelle will lead us in the chant.
Okay, Sutra 146. So I'll say it, part of the phrase first, part of the sutra, and you repeat it after me, and then we'll string it all together. Okay. Ta eva sabija. Ta eva sabija. Samādhi. Samādhi. Ta eva sabija. Samādhi. Ta eva sabija. Samādhi.
Sutra 146, Ta eva sabija samadhi. Literal rendition, literal rendering. Those absorptions constitute sabija samadhi, or forms of samapati. Sabija samadhi, this means with seed, with support. Ta eva, those very ones. And you have to refer back to our previous lesson in section 8, where we were discussing and talking about the savitarka, nirvitarka, savichara, nirvichara. These are samadhis where we are focusing on words, on images, on ideas, until our awareness becomes so saturated with that we move into the nirvitarka stage. Those themes that we're meditating on persists in our citta, in our field of awareness, without effort. And then the savichara and nirvichara stages of samadhi. In the savichara, we are intentionally focusing on subtle sensations of our object of meditation. And we focus on those things until they become so saturated within our citta, within our field of consciousness, that we then experience nirvichara, which is without this effort towards the subtle. There is simply an experience of the theme because of the momentum of the practice. And what this sutra 46 is simply describing is that these absorptions, that these are an experience of samadhi. It is samadhi, but it is with seed. It is focusing on something. So again, ta, eva, those very ones, those samadhis that we discussed previously, are with seed, sabija. And again, the word samadhi, cognitive absorption. So absorption involving conceptual thought or subtle objects. These are the samadhis that Sutra 146 is discussing, which we covered in our previous class. Let's move on to the next sutra.
Sutra 147. Nirvichara Vaisharadhye. Nirvichara Vaisharadhye. Dhyatma Prasadaha. Dhyatma Prasadaha. Nirvichara Vaisharadhye. Dhyatma Prasadaha. Nirvichara Vaisharadhye. Dhyatma Prasadaha.
Sutra 147. nirvichara vaisharadye dhyatma prasadaha. The literal rendering: upon mastery of the nirvichara samapati or samadhi, there arises the clarity of the inner self. There arises the experience or the lucidity of puruṣa. So nirvichara, without subtle reflection; vaisharadye, in the purity, clarity, or mastery of nirvichara; adhyatma, of the inner self; prasadaha, serenity, clarity, and lucidity. The beauty of the Yoga Sutras is that it describes a step-by-step process, a stage-by-stage process that unveils or reveals the whole purpose of yoga, this realization of puruṣa, the self. And where it describes here upon mastery of nirvichara, it's simply saying that once you have within your practice gained a capacity with this nirvichara stage, you are going to begin touching, experiencing, having revealed to you this clarity of the inner self. And if you can experience mastery of the nirvichara stage, well, then you can experience mastery of the savichara stage, of the nirvitarka stage, and of the savitarka stage. And again, this is beautiful because first you focus on the savitarka stage with thought, with contemplation, focusing on a theme as we've discussed in our previous classes. And eventually that becomes something that you master, something that you can do very well. Then you begin to experience the nirvitarka stage and you learn to glide into that and to hold your awareness in there. So you're not automatically jumping or trying to jump to the nirvichara stage. You are going from one step to the next step to the next step until eventually, going through those 4 stages, you learn to abide, you learn to practice this nirvichara samapati with ease, with grace, with poise, and you can do it consistently. But in order to do that, you have to build up the previous stages first. So I'm just clarifying this so that you know that there is a stage-by-stage process. And if you can't make it to this nirvichara stage, we'll go back to the previous step and then go back to the previous step. Start at the beginning and you'll find your way there. And it works. Many of the students who've gone through the Kriya-yoga apprenticeship program, we've explored this in an advanced part of that program. And they find their way there. It's a beautiful thing to observe. There's no guessing. There's no challenge other than having to do the work to get there. But if they apply the stages, this is revealed. And what is revealed? The lucidity, the serenity, the clarity of the inner self. Because in order to abide in a nirvichara state, there has to be a comfortableness with the light and the awareness of sattva. And the more we cultivate that light and that awareness of sattva within our own field, within our own citta, it becomes illuminated. And then we can recognize where that light is actually coming from. And that light is coming from this clarity of the inner self. So I love this sutra because it helps to explain the step-by-step process in a very simple way. And at the end of this particular section, section 9, I have some resources for you that can help you learn how to do this. But for now, let's go ahead and continue on with our sutra chanting and commentary. So we'll move on to 148.
Sutra 148. ṛtambharā, ṛtambharā, tatra prajñā, tatra prajñā, ṛtambharā, ṛtambharā, tatra prajñā, tatra prajñā, ṛtambharā, tatra prajñā, ṛtambharā tatra prajñā.
Sutra 148. This is actually one of my all-time favorite sutras because it's so much fun to say. ṛtambharā tatra prajñā. I just love the ṛta. And as I was looking into this and I was doing some research, we have these ideas of truth, and we can think of satya, sat, as truth. But there's also this word ṛta, cosmic order or truth. So this is the big truth. And the literal rendering, in that state, the wisdom is truth bearing. So in that state, that clarity of the self, that clarity generated by the nirvichara samapatti, truth becomes accessible to us. Not accessible to us in words or ideas, not accessible to us in knowledge or details or data, but as an unveiling of an experience. And even that's not the best way to describe it, but it's as if you can remember a moment when you finally learned something, and not because someone told you, but you experienced it yourself. The first time you had an experience that people have been telling you about for years, and then all of a sudden, there it was, you felt it in your body, you processed it within your nervous system, it unfolded itself for you. So in this state, by going through the process, by going through the stages of savitarka, nirvitarka, savichara, nirvichara, you get good at these things, you develop the skill, you direct your citta. I don't even want to use the word that you get good at them. It's simply that you are directing your citta to a particular way of being. And as you do that, you touch again this radiant field. You touch this light of puruṣa self. You are able to accept and be permeated by self-revealed knowledge. And then you experience the cosmic order. It's as if that practice itself is fulfilling you. It's bearing truth into you and through you. You're recognizing it within your being. So in that state, there is clear knowing beyond inference and beyond memory. Beyond inference and beyond memory. It's a direct knowledge, a direct wisdom. So this is a wonderful sutra to get stuck in your head. ṛtambharā tatra prajñā. I love that sutra. And if you continue to repeat this sutra in your head, in your mind, in time, you will be drawn to the practices which will allow you to experience this. So I think this can be a very powerful mantra in itself. All right, let's look at or listen to and chant Sutra 149.
Okay, Sutra 149. Śrutanumana, śrutanumana, pragyabhyam, pragyabhyam. Śrutanumana, pragyabhyam. Śrutanumana, pragyabhyam. Anyavishaya, anyavishaya. Visheshartatvat, visheshartatvat. Anyavishaya, visheshartatvat. Śrutanumana, pragyabhyam. Anyavishaya, visheshartatvat. Śrutanumana, pragyabhyam. Anyavishaya, visheshartatvat.
So the literal rendering of this sutra, it, that ṛtambharā prajñā, has a different object from knowledge based on testimony or inferenced because it has a unique nature. That's one way you can translate this. There's a few other ways too. But let's look at each word. So shruta, this is heard knowledge. Scriptural testimony, the teaching from others, the teachings from your teachers, from those gurus that you trust, that have proven to you that they have knowledge that is workable and accessible and accurate. Anumana, inference, logical reasoning from observed facts. For example, inference, anumana, I think this is an often overlooked way of understanding something, especially when we think of divine experience, or if we think of Ishvara as the Lord of the universe or something of that nature. All we have to do is look around to the fact that life exists, and the vastness of life, and the fragileness of life, and the resilience of life, and the beauty of the changing seasons, and the power of the cells and DNA and the cosmic order. If you just would stop and contemplate those things and think about those things and observe the movement of the sun through the sky and the stars at night, how can you not infer? How can you not infer that there is not a presence such as Ishvara, or some kind of cosmic order, Rita, that exists? So don't ever forget about inference as an extremely important way to know that something is there. There might not be a person beating on the door saying, hey, this is the truth of it all, and trying to explain to you how all of this came to be. That might not be coming your way. But if you can just look around, you might not know how it came to be, but you can infer that there surely is something there. So this can be very helpful, particularly as you reflect upon divine experience or divine intelligence or some kind of cosmic order. Pragyabhyam, from the two kinds of knowledge, which we just discussed. Anya vishaya, having a different object. And then vishesha artatvat, because of a special object. Now this is, I feel that this could be a little more confusing than it actually needs to be. Essentially, what this sutra is describing is that when you have the direct experience of this urta, this cosmic order, this truth-bearing insight, that is very different than simply having words in your head or sentences or scriptures that you trust. You know, they can be very valid and very accurate, but having the experience is very different than that which has been pointing to the experience the whole time. So it's not that complicated. The different object is just that one object is knowledge. Your teacher, your mentor, your guide has said, there's a radiant field, there's an infinite presence, which you can access through meditation. You've heard that, you've learned that, you've got it in your mind, you trust it, and you feel intuitively that it is true, even though you haven't experienced it. But that whole stellium of ideas and concepts, that is one object. The same thing with inference. You're using a part of your being, your logic and your reasoning to recognize, well, there has to be something. I don't know what it is, but I can infer the fact that, wow, isn't it amazing that my body is breathing, my heart is beating, my cells are doing whatever they're doing, and I'm not telling them to do any of those things. That way of seeing, inferring something is a different kind of knowledge, is a different object from, again, having the absolute, direct, clear, pristine experience of how it actually works, of feeling it deeply within your being, of feeling it deeply rippling through your citta and your field of consciousness. So this is just describing that you will know when you have this experience. In the same way, it's if you imagine a woman saying, how will I know when I'm in labor? Well, I've never been in labor, at least in the lifetimes I can remember. But those women who have been in labor, they would laugh at that question, because you will know when it's happening. And the same thing is true in this situation. How do you know when you're having that direct insight? It is unmistakable. And the same thing with the example of labor. If you've never been in labor before, when you get there, you are going to recognize it. The same thing is true here. When you begin tap into this or experience or resonate with this insight-bearing truth, there's no question about whether it's a thought in your head or a scriptural testimony or an inference. It's a direct, full-bodied experience of it. So this is also a really wonderful sutra. All these are really wonderful sutras. Okay, let's move on to Sutra 150.
Sutra 150. Tajjaha saṁskāronya saṁskāra. Tajjaha saṁskāronya saṁskāra. Pratibandhi, pratibandhi. Tajja saṁskāronya saṁskāra. Pratibandhi. Tajja saṁskāronya saṁskāra. Pratibandhi.
Sutra 150. The mental impressions, maybe mental isn't quite the right word there. The mental impressions born from that truth-bearing insight obstructs other impressions. So the impressions within our citta, within our field of consciousness, born of that truth-bearing insight obstructs other impressions. Tajjaha, born from that, again, that truth-bearing insight. Saṁskāra, the mental impressions, the subtle trace or conditionings left in the mind. Anya means other, referring to all other mental impressions. Saṁskāra, impressions, again, from ordinary cognition. And then pratibandhi, that which obstructs, prevents, or blocks. This sutra has a lot of different levels of meaning, but one of them that might be important to consider is that many people, when they begin meditating or practicing yoga, and there is an idea that they must give up attachment, they must give up desire, well, then they say, well, isn't the desire for liberation or the desire for spiritual growth, wasn't that a desire too? Well, yes, it is. However, it's a different kind of desire. And through the desire to cultivate the capacity to experience samadhi, which is the whole purpose and point of yoga practice, through that desire and that capacity, you begin to tap into these insight-bearing truths. And that has a whole different effect on your citta, on your mental field, on your field of consciousness than, say, the constant desire to want a donut, or the constant desire to listen to music, or the constant desire to have children, or the desire to become successful in life. Those are different things. Those bind you to the guṇas. Those bind you to the experiences of nature, and they get you involved in rajas and tamas. But the whole purpose of yoga, kriyā-yoga, Patañjali system, which is the umbrella under which kriyā-yoga falls, as we know it, this cultivates sattva. And as sattva is cultivated, other desires are checked. Other desires are let go of. Other desires are released. So what you will find is, as you practice yogic meditation well, as you go through the stages of samadhi, and as you begin to catch glimpses of this truth-bearing insight, you want that more. You start to lose your obsessions and your compulsions that most other people probably have because they're still just engaged in life. They're not actually yogis. But the more you engage in yoga, you eventually become very simple. Your life becomes simplified. You become very still. You become very calm. You become very organized. And that's because all these other mental impressions that make you want to do that distract you over here, that make you think you need this and then you need that, those fall away. So in a way, it's like you are lifting yourself into a realm of light. And just like the sun bleaches things or washes out the color in the things that it touches within your samadhi practice, your meditation practice, as you are brought into that field of light, that field of that radiant field, that truth-bearing insight, all these other fluctuations and changes within your field of consciousness become stiller and stiller and stiller until they become very still, as though all of those subliminal activators have been checked. And remember the beginning of this Pada 1, where it describes yoga. It says that yoga is the ending, the cessation of the fluctuations and changes within the field of consciousness, within the mind. And this is explaining to us that by constantly going into a state of samadhi repeatedly with non-attachment, abhyasa and vairagya over a long period of time, that all these other impressions, all these other vrittis are going to be stilled. And then we will become more and more absorbed in the self until eventually, as is described in the beginning of the sutras, then the self abides in its own nature. One final description that can be helpful, again, this comes from Ramana Maharshi. Someone had asked him about, the desire for self-knowledge and spiritual realization. And he said that, that desire and your practices are like a stick that's stirring a fire. You want to keep that fire burning. You want to keep burning those karmas, and your wood represents the karmas. But the stick is also made of wood, which means you are using it to keep this burning well, but eventually the stick itself burns out. And then you abide as the self, and then the practice is complete. And that is where we're going with non-attachment, with practice over a long period of time for the duration of one's lifetime, so that we can complete this whole experience. So let's go ahead and move on to the final sutra of Pada 1.
Sutra 151. Tasya nirodhe, tasya nirodhe, sarva nirodhan, sarva nirodhan, nirbīja samadhi, nirbīja samadhi. Tasya nirodhe, sarva nirodhan, nirbīja samadhi. Tasya nirodhe, sarva nirodhan, nirbīja samadhi.
So our final sutra for chapter 1. When those truth-born impressions, when they are restrained due to the cessation of all mental activity or the activity within citta, the field of our consciousness, the samadhi is seedless. Seedless. Tasya, of that. Again, referring to the saṁskāra born of the truth-bearing wisdom. Api, even. Nirodhe, in the cessation, when even that is restrained and dissolved. Sarva nirodhaḥ, from the cessation of all. Nirbīja, seedless. And then again, samadhi, complete absorption. This ties back into the initial, this ties back more so to the analogy or metaphor that I used for the last sutra about the stick. The stick is your practice. The stick, focusing on the stick, stirring that fire, burning the karmas, experiencing samadhi. Eventually there comes a point in time when even the wood of the stick is absorbed, is burned away. And when that happens, then we experience the second type of samadhi, the most important type of samadhi, which is a seedless samadhi, a samadhi without support, a samadhi that is happening, I guess you could say spontaneously, but it's not really spontaneous, is it? Because it required some steps to get there. Another way to look at it would be learning to throw a ball, throwing a ball well. Well, when your arm is winding up and you're getting ready to release it and throw it, these are the kinds of samadhi that's preparing the experience. But then when you release the ball and it flies off by itself without your arm pushing it anymore, then we're experiencing, in a way, a seedless samadhi state. So what happens throughout this whole process is you learn to cultivate these 4 stages of samadhi, these 4 steps in samadhi. The savitarka, with words and thoughts and imagery, focusing on a theme. Nirvitarka, when that theme sort of persists without your effort or engagement, but you're still absorbed in it deeply. And then savichara, you focus on the subtle aspect of that theme, and you hold it within your mind and your consciousness in a very abstract way until eventually the momentum of that experience also continues of its own. And then we have the nirvichara experience, the nirvichara stage. And then you cultivate staying in that. And as you cultivate staying in that, you begin to tap into samadhi with seed on a very subtle level. And then you have to do that again and again and again and again. So when you think about samadhi, you are learning to practice samadhi. Samadhi is not something that happens once and then that's it. Samadhi is something that you learn to touch. You learn to stay there for as long as you can. And then when you can't stay there anymore, well, you rest, you go about your life, and you practice coming back to it again until eventually you become very good at it. And so the moment you begin meditating, there it is. You're in this nirvichara state. This truth is available to you. And then you practice staying there. And as you stay there, then you quit meditating, you come back to it, you stay there over the course of months, over the course of years. Eventually what happens is that stick of your practice burns away. And then I really don't know how to describe it, but it's as if you just kind of roll over or are released into the seedless samadhi. So the way that you experience the seedless samadhi is by constant cultivation of the samadhi with seed and going through the stages to get there. And then referring back to those sutras 33 through 39, chapter 1, 33 through 39, the citta-vṛtti-nirodhaḥ sutras. Well, that is how you prepare yourself for being able to engage in these stages of samadhi. So once again, what we see, this is just the first book of the Yoga Sutras of Patañjali. And within this first book, he has told us what samadhi is. He's told us about the 2 types of samadhi. He's told us the stages of samadhi. He's told us how to prepare for experiencing that. And if you thread it all together, we know that sutra means thread. If you thread it all together and you have a good guide and you have good support and you have good discipline and you can attend to this, what's going to happen? You're going to recognize that yoga is the cessation or ending of the fluctuations in consciousness, and you will learn to abide. You will learn to abide in that state as your natural state. So much more could be said, and I'm anticipating going into the next chapter of the Yoga Sutras, but for now we'll stay here. And to conclude this particular section, just as always, we will have Danelle chant the sutras that we've gone through, maybe 2 times each, and then all of them together 2 times each.
All right, so we're just preparing. Sitting up tall, feeling into the body, feeling the breath, listening with your whole being, and repeating after me as best you are able. Ta eva sabīja samadhi. Ta eva sabīja samadhi. Nirvichara Vaisharadye prasada. Nirvichara Vaisharadye prasadaha ṛtambharā tatra prajñā ṛtambharā tatra prajñā śrutanumana pragyabhyam anyavashaya visheshartatvat śrutanumana pragyabhyam anyavashaya visheshartatvat tajya saṁskāronya saṁskāra pratibandhi tajya saṁskāronya saṁskāra pratibandhi tasyapi nirodhe sarvanirodhan nirbīja samādhi tasyapi nirodhe sarvanirodhan nirbīja samādhi ta eva sabīja samādhi nirvichara vaisharadye dhyatma prasadaha ṛtambharā tatra prajñā śrutanumana pragyabhyam anyavashaya visheshartatvat tajya saṁskāronya saṁskāra pratibandhi tasyapi nirodhe sarvanirodhan nirbīja samādhi ta eva sabīja samādhi nirvichara vaisharadye dhyatma prasadaha ṛtambharā tatra prajñā śrutanumana pragyabhyam anyavashaya visheshartatvat tajya saṁskāronya saṁskāra pratibandhi tasyapi nirodhe sarvanirodhan nirbīja samādhi iti pratamaha pāda.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Danelle. It was wonderful to have you. And I know we talked about this in the beginning of this class, but Danelle is a Kriya Yoga teacher, and she is in New Zealand. So if you ever need any assistance, you can get in touch with her. And I don't think I've updated the website just yet, but we'll put her contact information on the kriyayogaonline.com website. So again, thank you, Danelle. It was wonderful.
Thank you. My pleasure. Cheers.
Yeah. And before we conclude, I do want to share a few resources for you. So let me share a different screen here. What screen do I want to share? How about this one? Okay, so this is a new book by David McGrath, who's also a teacher in the Kriya Yoga tradition. His teacher was Roy Eugene Davis, a direct disciple of Paramahansa Yogananda. And this is David's book on Pada 1. And it's a very good commentary. It's very much in line with what we've been exploring within this course. And the beautiful thing about this book is that he has a lot of very accessible practices exercises at the end of certain sutras to help you make sense of the practice and to have a direct experience of the practice. So the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, Book 1, the Samādhi Pāda, Concentrated Absorption by David McGraw. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. But it's available on Amazon. A book I had written a while ago, about 13 years ago. This is an overview of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Just an overview. All 4 chapters. It does not go into a lot of the terminology like we did in this course. But if you would like an overview of the entire text, this can be helpful for you. Vyāsa Houston has a workbook, the Yoga Sutras workbook. So we were essentially taking the transliteration from this workbook, and he also has the Sanskrit characters, the alphabet in there too. It's not a commentary. It's simply a very direct translation, not a lot of elaboration, but it's a wonderful resource to have. I think I might have already talked about this course at kriyā-yoga.teachable.com. This is Kriya Yoga and the Primordial Powers of Creation. This can be very essential for you to understand the Sankhya philosophy. It's a 7-week course, and we have quite a few meditations in this course to give you, again, a direct experience of what are the gunas, what are these experiences of Sankhya philosophy. And then to support that, there's a book, Kriya Yoga and the Primordial Powers of Creation, a guide to sattva, rajas, and tamas. I feel that this is kind of the prequel to the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, because once you know and you have a sense of how Sankhya philosophy works and how it's presenting a cosmology, then the rest of the Yoga Sutras tend to be a little easier to understand, and you see just how it all links together. So I wanted to share these with you. Otherwise, we will be stopping here with our practice of the Yoga Sutras and the chanting of the Yoga Sutras. We're going to take a break for a little while, but our goal, right, Danelle, we're going to move on to chapter 2, yeah?
Yep.
Okay. So our goal is, once we take a break, and maybe in a few months in January or maybe February, we're going to come back around and we're going to begin with chapter 2 of the Yoga Sutras, following the same pattern of framework of chanting and then exploring the word meanings and doing just a brief commentary on each one. So, all right. Thank you all for being here. Om Shanti. Peace. Peace. Wonderful. Thank you.